Yes. So I did want to open the show, Jerry, with you telling us about your weekend adventure and what you discovered, who you talked to, and what you heard.
I will. So Kit and I went out Saturday morning to cover that top secret Lori Lightfoot Day of Action event where she decided to uh, gather all of her petition gatherers at the First Baptist Church down on Jackson to give them their marching orders and instructions on how to go out and collect petitions, get her back on the ballot. So here was Mayor Lightfoot at the event. Not kidding. I'm really happy to see how nicely she dressed for the occasion to greet all of her followers. That picture photograph is courtesy of our friend of the show, Kathy Powers, who was inside the church. Kit and I got there, and actually Kit got there before I did. There were two protesters there, Kathy and a gentleman named Ronald, and I'm not remembering his last name, but he was out there with a megaphone, and he was a friend of Kathy's, and they went there to, make their presence known out in front and, I guess address their grievances. So Kathy went inside, and apparently the pastor introduced Mayor Lightfoot, and Lightfoot was up there briefly, got into her entourage and left. The petitioners left the church. This gentleman, Ronald and Kathy, were outside. We shot interviews with them that sadly we can't share because the audio had some issues. But one of the things that Kathy shared in her interview with us, our brief time outside, was that there are IRS 501c3 laws that basically say if you are a nonprofit organization, you cannot sponsor or participate in political events, right? So I went online and to the IRS website and kind of looked this up because remember when we talked about this last Friday, her campaign was not promoting or publicizing this. It was a private event that she was only inviting her supporters to because they did not want any disruptors. And there were no disruptors that showed up, despite the fact we shared this and said, her fans and her critics should attend, she's out there for a day of action. And I also consulted with Lainey, as I consulted with you, Kira, because there's a big question regarding this this particular provision in the IRS tax code that nonprofit organizations are not supposed to become involved in, I guess, endorsing political candidates because of the separation of church and state and nonprofit status. Now, this has happened a lot. And my speculation is the reason that the regular press was not invited to this thing is because they might wonder about that. Because when you have a pastor getting up in front of the people that are there to go out and collect your petitions, and the mayor is there rallying the troops, it does kind of speak to the fact that there is that provision in the tax code. Now, by Lainey's opinion, and Lainey is much smarter than I am, as well as Kathy, I talked with Kathy on the phone about this, there is a conflict here. Now, the problem is there is no enforcement regarding this conflict because this kind of stuff was happening as far back as Old Man Daley, Senior. He would regularly gather his, political followers, his supporters to churches. The thing that strikes me about this, though, is that Lightfoot and her campaign should know that if someone were to look into this, there could be questions about a conflict of interest. Apparently doesn't matter to her. The optics don't look good. The optics don't look good in that, I guess that's why, unlike a lot of other candidates who run for mayor who promote their petition campaigns, this was a private event at this church. And I guess to me, what's odious about it, as far as Lightfoot is concerned, there are a lot of good people in that community, a lot of God-fearing, church-going people. Whether I, have my thoughts on faith and religion is a separate thing, but these are good people who give people the benefit of the doubt. What she was doing, I feel, in deciding to use that church as her base of operations to send out her petition collectors was basically pander to good-natured people who believe the bullshit that she peddles all the time. She's abandoned these communities. She's abandoned that neighborhood. She was there. Look how she's dressed. I mean, a lot of respect. I mean, I don't want to be so superficial about it, but seriously, okay? There's Kathy. The pastor said how much Lori has done for the South and West Sides. What has she done? Now, one of the other people that were there, Ronald, who was outside with Kathy, he was there on a bullhorn and some people surrounded him and were, I guess, asking him to like either move somewhere else. That's what Kit witnessed before I got there. And I asked that gentleman, Ronald, if they were preventing him from speaking his voice, and he said no. But interestingly enough, when we were shooting the interview with Ronald, those gentlemen were nearby, and they were asking Ronald, is he okay? Was he having any problems? As if we were harassing him by interviewing him. And Ronald said, no, I'm fine. And when I looked over to them and I said, well, Kit, like, get them, and Kit put the camera on them, they quickly dispersed. So I do think that this was a controlled and managed event, and how Lightfoot didn't want the more mainstream press there to see that she was using a church as a base of operations to get petitions collected, which apparently is a conflict, although it's never enforced, because, our politicians are above the law and they can do this and they get away with it. And, because they are who they are, nothing is really enforced. So Ed, I know that you shared some thoughts on this too.
And just, for people who can't wrap their head around a 501c3, basically it's a nonprofit organization. Maybe you've heard of those. Churches are supposed to be nonprofit organizations, which is why they have a tax exempt status. Now, if they do things like politics, if they participate in politics, then they are supposed to lose that status. That's what Jerry's getting at. If you're having trouble.
And the gentleman we spoke with really quickly, his name was Ronald Jackson. Sorry, I forgot his last name, but that was the other gentleman I mentioned that was there with Kathy, who wanted to speak with us, and he shared a lot about his criticisms of Mayor Lightfoot, as did Kathy, who brought that 501c issue to Kit and my attention, that we came and looked into it and shared it with everybody, Kira and Ed and Lainey, as we were trying to walk away from this saying, look, there weren't a lot of critics that showed up, and frankly, I don't think any of her petition gatherers wanted to talk to us, given how they saw us interviewing Ronald, and seemed to be concerned that he was a voice of criticism. But I guess the point is, when we came away from this, it's just like the whole optics of doing this privately and not promoting it may have something to do with the fact that they didn't want, I guess, more attention on this matter.
Yeah, that was the other point that I had. I think I had already made on Friday when we discovered this, was that maybe she's having trouble getting signatures, and that this is one of those situations where a normal candidate would put out as much news and information on all of their outlets, social media and all that stuff, to let people know to come and help them with their signature drive. She didn't do that. And I can understand how sometimes when you're running a political campaign, you want to be a little wary of agent provocateurs, so to speak, people who might come in and start collecting signatures for you, but you don't know if they're writing in fake ones, throwing a full sheet of fake signatures in there while they're quote unquote helping you collect signatures. So I can understand being wary of that. Yeah. But in her case, she should be able to, as a current mayor, get above and beyond the signatures if she's trying to get reelected, if she actually has good public support, even mediocre public support.
Here's the other issue to me, Ed. She didn't need to do this at a church. She could have potentially caused problems for them, put them in peril. She should have done this at a community hall that she rented. Okay. And the fact that she was doing it at church, to me, just speaks to the way that she's pandering to people of faith who are a little bit more trusting of people like her when they shouldn't be, instead of doing this somewhere where she could have rented a community center or something,
or even a restaurant, like a party banquet hall, or even a Portillo's. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So, and I, dressed as Tim Dillon, the very popular internet comedian, calls her, as a true Batman villain. Look at her over here with her gangster hat, surly as ever.
I think this is a really embarrassment. As usual, this is a bad gamble by Lightfoot, who's going to a church this was a Saturday morning, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Going to a church on Saturday morning, but knowing that she's going to be out there walking around collecting signatures, so she's dressing up in her walking workout clothes.
Dude, She didn't stick around to collect signatures. She got into her limousine and left. And by the way, Ronald was sharing with us. It looks like all those
was going to.
well, Ronald shared with us.
Appearances.
Ronald shared with us because he saw her entourage arrive and leave. She's got a whole new fleet of vehicles with, that don't have like the stickers out of their windows or something, he said. So, there's more money going into her what do they call not entourage, what are they caravan, her caravan. Yeah. So all new vehicles in her caravan. They whisked her off. She was there. I don't know, Kathy. I think that she was there maybe all of half hour, maybe 20 minutes before, but she didn't participate in the signature collection. They got her out of there probably, some other fundraising event, I would imagine. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's
I've been to probably dozens of days of action for a variety of different candidates. And I'm trying to think if there have been any candidates that I've gone to a day of action for who wasn't already an incumbent. So all of the days of action that I've been a part of, no, there was one incumbent I went to a day of action for, but all of them, even that one, was publicly posted. You could find an event on Facebook to share with people and invite people.
Right.
Now, most of the time, it's the people within the organization that are doing it, and they of course open the floodgates to anybody else who wants to come and do that and practice their civic duty, right? So I think it is interesting that they made it a secret, but I think to Kathy's point in regard to they didn't want to riot. Sometimes I wonder if because of the popularity of not popularity or the well-knownness of the incumbent, right? And the disliking of the incumbent, I do wonder if they wanted to avoid any distractions, any issues, people coming to kind of fuck with the day of action, basically, which I can respect.
Yeah. I can understand that. I can respect that, but it's Lightfoot.
Yeah, my other piece is, when Ed said, maybe the campaign is having some problems. One of the reasons they may not want you talking to people who are volunteering is they might be paid canvassers, because that's another really big thing is paying canvassers, and it's like, if you start interviewing canvassers who are going and collecting signatures and they're all like, I don't really care, I'm just getting paid $20 an hour to do this, then that really looks bad.
Yeah.
And then in regards to,
but I think a lot of candidates do that, Kira.
Yeah.
I mean, because really most regular people, they don't have enough time in the day to go out and help get signatures signed for candidates. You're going to have. Why is Mayor Lightfoot dressed like Gene Hackman from the French Connection?
French Connection. That's awesome.
That's an interesting callback, Arthur.
That is an interesting callback.
See, I think I think that she's more embracing her inner gangster with that fedora.
Well, the fedora. A hat can make all the difference there, Jerry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as far as the 501c3 is concerned, there's a part of me that's just like, that's kind of a shitty move on Lightfoot's part, because the person or the entity that gets in trouble for that is the church itself.
Not her.
And, I think the way to sidestep it, if I understand correctly, and I could be wrong here, is that the church would have to open itself up to allowing every other candidate,
or what Pat says down here,
or according to Pat, if they rented the church, that would mean that they're not supporting her. So I guess those are.
But the pastor getting up there,
but
if she rented the church and you got the pastor up there talking about everything she's done,
that doesn't align. That doesn't align.
Yeah, that's a little hanky.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty run of the mill for the day, like the launch day of action, to have the candidate there, to even have other candidates there to get people jazzed. So that's pretty normal. But I do think that you guys bring up a really interesting point and an interesting conundrum in regards to the church. And I think it speaks regardless of what the secrecy was about, because I think it has more to do with wanting not wanting like a lot of distractions for like the volunteers or the paid canvassers, whatever they are. I think it was more in the world of that, if I were to speculate. But this is a lot irresponsible unless they are covering their tracks, which I assume that they are.
Ed's matching the look. Hold on.
No, you look too like esteemed, Ed. Like, I just think that hat is too classy, both of you.
Oh, should I switch to the other hat?
Both of you are not doing a good job.
Hold on. Let me get the other hat.
Yeah, well, Jerry, you kind of got it, actually. Yeah. That's pretty good. I do think the hat not being black adds to the sort of like villainy look. Yeah.
She looks like a Batman villain.
That's good. That's good.
There you go.
So, yes, I love performance artist Ed Heller at your service, everybody.
And how she could have
something to watch or look for or ask questions about, like, hey, whatever church this is, I know it was up here at the top. Are you planning on having all of the other candidates come and speak at your church? Or did they pay you to utilize the space? Or how did that deal go? Because campaign is very specific that 501c3s cannot get involved with campaigns. They can do with policies, policy issues. One of my organizations met at a church for a long time, but we weren't running candidates out of that church. And so I think that there is a clear distinction. And so I would be curious to see how this unfolds and if it unfolds. Cool. Anything
more as far as imperiling in the church there.
You're not to approve of your methods.
Yeah? Well, you're not from Chicago.
You know what I think is going to be hilarious? If she doesn't get enough signatures.
Yeah, that's going to be.
Oh my God.
That's going to be glorious.
I mean, that'll be amazing breaking news if that happens.
Yeah. Oh, can't wait to report on it.
And then when that happens, she's going to say, well, it looks like I don't really have the support, so I'm just not going to run for re-election. Oh, I forgot to put the thing up. Yeah. So, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me not being able to get enough signatures.
Has more to do with this.
La, 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 la. That reminds me, I think I forgot my file today for the show. Damn it. All right. It's okay. I'll just pick my fingers until they'll bleed. It's cool.